Prepare yourselves for a battle of epic proportions between two titans. Feast upon their voices and revel in their words. This is Dueling Ogres.
Hello, Ogres, and welcome to episode 157. Thank you for joining us, as always, on this experienced Wednesday evening, Earth date, June 20th, 2018. I'm your host, Remington Hitchcock, and with me, as always, my co-host, Brandon Full. Say hello, Brandon.
Hello, Remington. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm great, actually.
Why are you great, Brandon?
No reason.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm great because we have a guest here.
Thanks for making it awkward, Brandon.
Yeah.
It's like we haven't podcasted in a week.
I know, that awkward silence that just permeates everything.
Yeah, especially when we have it recorded for a week and we're like, oh yeah, this is what we do occasionally for a living.
For 157 episodes.
For 157 episodes.
You would think we'd be better by now, really.
Yeah, you would think. But you're right, we do have a guest. We have with us today the indomitable Viscount Terry W. Ervin II, to laugh at my B-word fact.
It just rolls so well.
Indomitable. Hi, Terry.
Hey, better than abominable.
Yeah.
The abominable Viscount Terry W. Ervin II.
He has slain many.
Hey, good to see you guys.
It's nice
Yeah,
to
it's
have
good to
you.
see you too.
Yeah.
Is this like number 3 or number 4?
Number 4. Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the 4th one that Terry has come down to visit us. Graciously. I don't know why he keeps driving down. Like he
Autopilot.
Because where, I mean, you don't have to tell us exactly your address or anything, but whereabouts do you live?
St. Paris, Ohio. It's west central Ohio. Small community, about 2,000 people. It's right between Piqua and Urbana.
Okay, right.
So about 2,000 people.
And it's like, what, hour and 45 minutes or?
To here?
Yeah. Or
Ooh.
longer than that?
It's about 190 miles.
Okay, that means absolutely nothing to me.
But, well, I usually just convert it about, since most of it's interstate, about 60, a mile a minute.
Right. Okay. So yeah.
It's like a 3-hour drive for him.
Okay. I'm bad at math.
Okay. Well, can't be good at everything.
No.
You
No, I
think you'd be good at
left a
some
little
things.
after 9 and I got here a little after 3, but I stopped about 10 minutes for lunch. And like I told you, I had a little construction that slowed me down.
Right, yeah.
And then I missed one of the little side streets to get to your place. So I had to backtrack that, added about 3 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Where'd you stop for lunch?
Wendy's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wendy's is one of your go-tos, though, isn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I will stop there. I'll stop at the same place every time. And so probably on the way home, I'll stop at the McDonald's in Marietta.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'll stop there probably. But like, I'll just pick a place that I know is good. The service is decent and I'll just go there. Like when my father was in the hospital for a couple summers, I'd go up to Toledo and I'd always stop at the same Burger King.
Yeah.
They just knew me because I'd go up about every other day and people just get to know you and they're nice. It's not exactly like Cheers or something like that.
Right.
But-
Hey, Terry.
But, people treat you right. And I don't know, I try to treat people right anyways. They work fast food or they work at a gas station or whatever. 'Cause I hate it when people treat workers
Like they're not human.
they're not human or that they're just a widget or they're not important.
Yeah.
Or that they're not even there. They'll be sitting on their darn phone, and the person will say, that's $1.95 and they'll be, flicking away and okay, like
Yeah.
you're interrupting me.
Yeah. I've gotten to the point where a lot of times if somebody is wearing a name tag, I will actively use their name when I'm...
Do their eyes widen a little bit?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get a little confused look, like, how do you know my name? Forgetting that they're wearing a name tag. I'll get that sometimes as well.
I used to hate that when I worked in service when they would use my name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're one of the weird ones, I guess.
Well, because I would get the attitude of like, you don't know me.
Especially if you borrowed somebody's name tag because you left yours at home.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Jessica.
You don't know me.
So would you
How
say
dare you use my Christian name?
would you say you're a creature of habit then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. We'll go out to eat and we go to like a lot of the same restaurants. Like almost every Friday, we'll go to a restaurant in Urbana, La Palma, and I usually will get the same meal. And sometimes they'll won't even ask me.
Yeah.
You know,
They just know.
one of my daughters is similar. My wife kind of changes it up. My other daughter will change it up sometimes. Every now and then I'll get something a little bit different. But one thing you can tell if you get the same thing over the years, you can tell when they change their recipe
Yeah.
or their portions. You just
Or their
look at it and you
cook.
say, this is different.
Yeah. Applebee's is a good example. Do you mind?
I think the thunder's really going to add a good ambience to this whole
Yeah.
thing. It's
If
a shame
comes
it
through.
didn't thunder last year when we talked about Thunder Wells, though. That would have been perfect.
Yeah. It's like that.
But yeah, Applebee's is a good example for me. 9 times out of 10, I'll get like steak, broccoli, and mashed potatoes, or maybe loaded mashed potatoes, or I'll get a quesadilla burger. Those are my 2 go-tos whenever I go to Applebee's. But occasionally, I will challenge myself. A lot of times, whenever I go out to a restaurant, though, it's going to be a steak because I don't get a steak very often.
Yeah.
Or at least a better cut of steak than what we tend to buy at the grocery store.
And if you're going to go there, you're going to pay good money. You want to enjoy it. You don't
Yeah.
want to say, oh.
Exactly. Even if it ends up being like a little gristly or a cook doesn't know what in the hell medium rare is.
Yeah.
That always drives
I'll
me
eat
nuts.
the same thing. Some of the people at work, I eat the same thing for lunch every day. They will see it. I have 2 little cups of yogurt. I'll put 2 little boxes of raisins in them, and then I'll have a little Jello thing, with the fruit in it, and I'll change that, or I'll change up the type of yogurt, and then sometimes instead I'll have instead of the Jello, I'll have applesauce. But
Yeah, we
the
talked
same
about
thing. Yeah, it's easy, it's fast. You like it, and there you go.
Yeah, we talked about that your eating habits last time when we were talking
Probably.
about the spam.
I haven't changed.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have to mix it up. I can't do the same thing for lunch. It would drive me nuts.
I've gotten to the point where, because of the dieting that I'm doing, the counting of the calories that I'm doing, my meal at work is usually chicken and some kind of vegetable. But sometimes it's fajita chicken, so it's got a little bit of different spice to it, or it's just regular sliced up grilled chicken. But it's always chicken, and it's always a vegetable of some kind. Usually broccoli, or like a California medley, which is broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots, I think. So super exciting podcast content.
Do people in California, is that what they eat, you think, or somebody just marketed it as that?
They just call it a medley, though.
Yeah. They're like, I know where I'm at, I think. Dude, brah.
So I wanted to tell you about this, Remington. I have been looking for an apartment, as you know.
Yes.
And I found one.
Good.
Which is awesome. But my dad calls me, and this has been a few weeks ago when I was still looking for an apartment.
Yeah.
And he tells me that there's a trailer for rent.
Yeah.
And have you ever lived in a trailer?
Yes.
Terry? You have? What did you think of it?
I would not recommend it.
See, I was on the fence about it too, but my dad's like, oh, trailer's not too bad. It's cheap. It's in a good neighborhood. You should check it out. So I'm like, okay, I'm not totally averse to living in a trailer. So I'm telling some people I know ahead of time where this trailer park is. And they immediately are like, no, Brandon, you don't want to go there. This trailer park is just the worst trailer park you will ever see. Not an exaggeration. It is just disgusting. But I'm trying to stay positive. So I go and look at it, and I meet the handy woman outside of the trailer. And already the steps are falling apart. They're at an angle to even walk up to it. The bottom base of the trailer, like where the metal is missing some of the slats you can see underneath, and you can see some animals underneath there. You can see some eyes. So it's just terrible looking. She's smoking a cigarette. We walk inside. She never stops smoking her cigarette the whole time she's showing it to me. And she's ashing on the floor as she shows me around this trailer. It's got linoleum, and the linoleum's peeling up. It just looks disgusting. But the piece de resistance of this entire thing is there's just a giant pile of animal feces in the middle of the floor.
Wow.
As we're looking. And she goes, oh, animal must have shit on the floor. And I go, yeah, it looks like it. And she goes, that wasn't here yesterday. Wild animals get in here sometimes.
So you passed?
Yeah, I passed on that place.
See, the thing is, if it's in a trailer park, if the manager runs the park well and screens people well and requires people to maintain their trailers well, then it can be a reasonable place to live. But if they don't, then it's a problem. And owning a trailer, it's impossible to fix a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Like if something
it's
goes
not
bad.
meant to be. I mean, I remember I tried to fix a light switch and I unscrewed it and fixed, and it wouldn't go back in. So I just glued it to the wall because there was no other way unless I tore out the wall and the entire fixture to, it just fell apart.
Wow.
The floor where because my wife had owned it when we got married. And so she moved it from where she lived. There's nothing like watching your house travel down a state highway at 70 miles an hour. You're like,
right.
Oh my gosh. But, and it was a decent place and stuff, but, they just don't hold up like a house. They're not meant to. And like the week or something before we moved, it sprung a tiny little leak underneath one of the pipes, and it was particle board.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the whole, the bathroom
just
and the
sank.
bedroom just sagged, sank, and fell out. And it had to be replaced.
Yeah.
And I remember one winter, it's like, 5 degrees below zero out. And I'm under the trailer rewrapping the water lines with heat tape because they had frozen.
Yeah.
And so they're their own challenges. I guess if you rented one, it's something you could walk away from. But
owning one, not so
but
much.
probably not if there's animals creeping in and jumping.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be, really crappy to wake up to literally in the morning as you're walking through the kit. Oh, dang it. Now I got to clean my shoe.
Just a raccoon unafraid of anybody.
Well, that's awful, Brandon. That sounds like it was just the worst experience ever.
But it made for a good story, which is what most of life is about, right?
Yeah. Making good stories.
Yeah.
I don't have any good stories. I'm lame.
You don't have more mattress stories?
No, I don't have any more mattress stories.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I'd talk about like while I'm still working there. Maybe one day when I
so this
leave.
real stupid customer comes in,
Yeah.
real dummy.
Yeah, real idiot doesn't know anything about coil counts or foam densities or.
You lost me.
Yeah.
You lost most of the audience.
Didn't even know they were supposed to rotate their mattress.
You have to be
You're
careful.
supposed to rotate your. Oh.
Well,
you
like
know it, Terry.
180 degrees or
Yeah.
flip it sideways?
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
So, Terry, you you have to be careful as a teacher, right? Like when you're talking about stories, like when you're telling stories about being a teacher,
Yeah,
as far as students go.
correct.
Is there something like the Hippocratic Oath, but for teachers? Or is it just angry parents is what you have to watch out for?
It's just common sense.
Yeah.
It's your job, and I always just remember, I just look at it and think, if I was a student, would I want this shared?
Mm.
And, it's a profession. It's not like where you're somebody's therapist or you're a priest in confession
Right.
type thing. But it's just, it's a person's personal business. And if I do tell a story, usually it's such a generic one that
It could be any student.
it could be a whole variety of students, so that one student wouldn't be picked out.
Yeah.
Not like most of them would just laugh at it because it was something silly that they did, but still, you just never know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think most teachers are like that. Teachers are always saying, we could write a book about all this stuff, but then people could figure it out.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of teaching, how has the sensitivity of just the general public affected you? I've been curious.
Here's a topic Remington wants to get into.
Just briefly.
You mean like how everybody gets their feelings hurt?
Yeah, the overall sensitivity of everybody.
I think a lot of it's faux being, I'm insulted.
Yeah.
I think some people just need drama in their life,
Yeah.
and this is a way to drum up drama. I don't think some people are truly insulted
Right.
about things or incensed about things, but a lot of times I think it's just something to add a spice to life because their life is in the doldrums.
Yeah.
And so if there can be some kind of crisis, there can be something, I think, yeah, sometimes people are like that. And it makes it difficult for their friends or family or just professionals to know what really is a problem and what isn't a problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you start crying wolf too many times, then when it is wolf, who knows?
Yeah. That's true.
And that's kind of where you feel like things are at, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like people are crying wolf too many times now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people just get incensed, as Terry said, too easily about things that don't need to be upset in any way.
You're referring, of course, to political correctness, right?
I'm referring to anything in general nowadays. It seems like anything can be immediately turned and used against you or somebody near you, or there's no sitting and thinking about what happened or why it happened or how it happened or the varying degrees of gray that is life. You know, it seems like there has been this jump back to like there's only black and white, and if you're right, you're right, and if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Or if you're wrong, and you're right, you're wrong too. There's a lot of that goes on as well.
Have you ever found yourself, Terry, on the wrong end of that, where you've said something or done something that has surprised you with the response?
Well, you probably, if you watch my Facebook page or something, I'm pretty quiet about things.
Yeah.
Because my wife says, and it's true, I just don't get excited about a lot of stuff and I don't get fired up. One of the good measures, I think, to see, like if you're talking about politics, is if it's a real issue or not. If somebody was all hyped up about it, ask them 2 months later what they were upset about 2 months ago. Ask them what was going on that was so terrible in May.
Yeah.
And if they can't remember, then it really wasn't an issue.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they just
But if
wanted
they
to
can
be hyped
remember,
up.
then it was. That 2 months is a long time. But if it was something really important to them, they would remember.
Yeah.
It wasn't the crisis of the moment.
Yeah. 2 months is especially a long time now because there's so much happening. It feels like every day there's something new in the news about whatever's going on politically.
But that has to be, that's part of the news cycle. They drive that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Otherwise, why would you tune in?
Yeah.
There has to be a new crisis every week or something going on, because if there's not something going on, then why are you going to tune in to see what they have to say about it?
Right.
Do you think the news is just becoming more and more sensational? Or do you think it's been this way for a while?
I think with so many news outlets, it's a good thing, but it also brings the competition in. And so they're competing for those eyes, those ears. So it makes it tricky.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of them want to be journalists, for example, but they've got to have a constituent that's going to come back to them. Because if you're just reading them the news, I don't know.
I think that on a national level, just the 24-hour news channels have been, it's a business, and they have content that they have to create, and they have to drive eyes to that content, and you have to do that. I mean, it's just the nature of that game.
Mhm.
But I think a quote unquote 24-hour news outlet is a mistake, because there's stuff happening all over, and that's what we have local news for. But some days there's just not news, or not noteworthy news on a national scale,
Yeah.
or it's not an all day thing. So they just grab hold of something and sensationalize it until they can pull 24 hours worth of content out of it, or until something new happens.
Yeah.
That's why I don't watch the news, is because it's this cavalcade of repetitiveness on who said what and how bad or good, or the heads butting against it, you know.
So you're saying that on those TV talk shows, minds have never been changed, or a Facebook argument has never changed somebody's position, or Twitter?
Yeah.
Or what?
Especially Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you want to listen to the news or watch the news, you have to pick a variety of sources.
Yeah.
You got to pick some of their left wing, some of their right wing, some of their, pick a variety, and you'll get probably the best picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that.
But it takes a lot of time. And if you don't have that kind of time to sift through, really what happens in Washington isn't going to affect us directly that much. Local government is what affects you the most, and most people ignore that. I mean, I'm a village councilman. I know that. It makes a difference what the local decisions are.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of something to look at. Actually, in Relic Tech, the main character, in the future, he kind of looks at it the same way, in that, there's corporate and there's government sources, and then there's some activist sources that he would always try and read, because that's what he did to kill time. He was a security guard.
Yeah.
Kind of like, two things happen in a 10-hour shift.
Yeah.
And so, but that was, I guess that was a little bit of my philosophy put on him, although he really wasn't my character. He was a kind of a sensible guy like that. The character wasn't me, but that was just something that seems to make sense to him, because he was kind of suspicious of everybody anyways. And the best thing you can do is figure out, everybody had an agenda.
Yeah.
And try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Which is true. Everybody does have an agenda. And the thing that gets me is whenever I'll see opinion pieces passed off as actual news.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy. I'm on the Reddit politics board a lot, which the Reddit, I like it because it's an aggregate of stories.
Yeah.
But it's become very, very anti-Trump, and every story, there's, like you said, there's not news every day.
Yeah.
So it'll be stories that are like, here's why Trump should be impeached. And it's like, that's not a news story. That's an opinion piece.
Yeah.
But it's being passed off as news. And I mean, I like to read it because I'm a left-leaning person, but at the same time, I read it with a grain of salt, because it's like, this is just a journalist who has compiled their feelings on what they think is an actual news story, and it's just passing it off because nothing happened today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Well, because government works slow.
Yeah.
And it's meant to work slowly. You don't want a snap decision by the senators and the representatives to, we're just going to pass this law today and it's going to go through tomorrow and it's going to be enacted. You wanted a slow, deliberative process, because you want people to think about what they're going to do. You want to think about the ramifications down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. From a local government standpoint, you mentioned how people don't really, the average citizen doesn't really care necessarily.
Yeah. I think some of it isn't that they either they don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of you can remember back to your high school local government class? When they did social studies, very few people can.
Yeah.
But you're right. They don't care, or they don't have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's out living their own life, and the only people who are actively involved in it are the people who go out of their way to be actively involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the local government, did you ever watch Futurama? I don't know if you were.
I've seen the television program a lot, but I've never watched a full episode.
Okay.
I mean, you'll be flipping through, and
there's one episode, and it's one of my favorite episodes. Bender, the robot, he gets launched into space, and he's floating free through space, and he ends up creating, or somehow he gets pelted with rocks, and he ends up having a little civilization living on him. And then that civilization splits off, and there's another civilization that's living on his back and then on his front, and they end up warring and destroying each other as he's trying to help them succeed. Later on in the episode, he runs into a nebula that starts flashing in binary, and he's like, hey, that's binary. So he kind of floats himself over to it, and the nebula starts to speak. And he's like, wait a minute, you're not a nebula, you're God. And he's like, I guess I could be, I don't know. And he was like, what did I do wrong with the civilization? He said, there's a certain amount of hands-offness that you have to have. And the quote that sticks with me the best is, he says, when you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all. And that has always stuck with me. And I feel that that's kind of like a local government thing as well.
Yeah, I think as long as things are running smoothly. The thing is, you have people that are, I represent people, people voted for me.
Right.
People talk to me. They they ask me, well, can you do this? You should do this, or this is what I think. That not just the people that come to the meetings, but I'll talk to people outside. What do you think, or what's important to you? Somebody asked me, when is my street going to get worked on? It's really bad, or those kind of things, or we need a speed bump here, or the running lights here, or this house isn't cutting their grass, it's 2 feet deep. Can you get something
Right.
taken care of with that? And it's a representative form of government. So I represent them. Then they have to trust me to go in and make decisions to represent them. But, it's something, sometimes I have information that they don't have when I make a vote. We go into executive session and we have information given to us, and then we kind of discuss what that means. But in executive session, you can't make any decisions. You can't say, well, this is how we're going to vote or anything like that. You can just get information, because the Sunshine Law requires you, any decisions you make, anything like that, has to be out in the open. But I may know some information, but I can't necessarily share it. You just have to trust me to make the right decision. If you don't, vote me out of office.
Yeah.
Put somebody else in there.
Yeah.
And there's only so much money to go around.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, we just looked at a street in town about 3 or 4 blocks to get completely repaved. In a two-phase process, it'd be about $1.5 million.
Wow.
So, the village doesn't have that kind of money laying around. So we're looking to try and get matching grants and things like that. But then again, it still has to come out of the village money. You still have to run a police department. You still have to do a whole bunch of other things. And so, what do you do? But then that street is deteriorated. It affects those people. It's a hard choice. And so you have to, as a representative, you have to weigh all the different needs of the village and things like that.
Yeah.
And just make the best decision you can. And usually you end up making somebody mad.
Right.
And people remember when they're mad, unlike what you said, Remington, where if things are going right, they don't even think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
that's the truth of it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, circling back to sensationalist news, is that a lot of the news stories are not happy news stories. They're usually presented in a way to evoke some kind of fear or anger or hostility towards something, because that is the most visceral and remembrant feeling that we have as humans.
and sometimes there's not a good decision. There's just decisions that you can make that are less bad.
Yeah, for sure.
And it happens in everybody's life too. Sometimes you have to make a choice and there's not a good choice. You just have to say, which one is the best of the options I have available.
Yeah. The better of two evils, as they would say.
The lesser of two evils.
That too. The lesser of two evils, yes. I was essentially
You were
the same.
close.
Your face is close.
Thank you.
It's too close. It's not too close. Has this gotten weird yet?
Yeah, very.
Good.
So do you want to get into some book stuff?
Sure.
So last time you were here, Terry, you were working on a lit RPG novel, which you had talked about what a lit RPG novel was, which is effectively characters get brought into a game of some kind, a role-playing game, and it involves, they know that they came from outside and that they're in this world now, right? Is that effectively what?
That was mine. Lit RPG is kind of, I mean, you guys, some of you have read, we've talked about Robert Bevan's books.
Yeah.
And that would be lit RPG. But there's other lit RPG that's kind of like video game. You guys have played video games where people get drawn in or part of or involved in a video game as well, which is a little bit different than role-playing games.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I found out is, as I've written this and gone further into the genre, the subgenre of fantasy,
Right.
science fiction, that there's a whole strata of that. There's like, what do they call crunchy lit RPG, where it has all kinds of stats and numbers, and there's charts and everything, and character and notifications that pop up during a novel, just like in a game.
Oh, wow. Huh.
And so, and some people really love those, and they don't like what I write. And then some people kind of like what I write, which is more soft RPG, it's hard science fiction, soft science fiction.
Yeah.
So there's some that mine would be more on the soft end, where it is lit RPG, but it's not the hard type.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to make clear that it's a wider spectrum than I thought it was when I first got involved in it.
Yeah. How did you discover that there was a wider spectrum to it?
People were complaining about my book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And not complaining, just that they didn't like it because it didn't have this or it didn't do this. And this is what I was expecting from lit RPG.
Right.
But, it's just like science fiction. You take science fiction, but, there's all kinds of under that topic. So lit RPG, there's a lot. And when I looked at my story, with tabletop or role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, there's dice involved, there's tables, there's rolls, but so much of it is the role-playing itself is what people go for.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so mine was written more in that. Yeah, every now and then there'll be a reference to the game, but it's a balance. It's more character-driven than stat-driven, up front and things like that. The stats affect what the characters can or can't do.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's a balance like that. And the other thing I thought was people who are into regular fantasy would find this easier to move into the subgenre than they would just going to the straight hard crunchy, where everything is just hammered out number wise.
Yeah.
That's really weird because I like the stats and charts and all of that stuff when I'm in the book. Like if I'm researching for a character that I'm going to make to play. But I don't know if I could enjoy. I'd have to try one, I guess.
Yeah, you could. It's not what I would be interested in reading, but there's a lot of people who are. So
yeah,
and that's how I kind of discovered it more because you kind of read what you like, and,
right.
and you research and stuff. And lit RPG, like it's kind of it's newer. I mean, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
But as far as being really popular, the last few years, it's kind of new.
It seems like it's really taken off.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, because I was reading, I kind of led the question a little bit because I remember us talking sort of through Facebook chat about how people were, no, I wouldn't say attacking you, just in the reviews were saying like, this isn't lit RPG or this isn't what I was expecting lit RPG to be.
Buried the lead, Brandon.
Yeah. So I had read a little bit about lit RPGs and their history to see what these people were coming from. And yeah, it's been around for quite a while, but it really, I don't know what it is that made it take off in the last few years, but it really seems to have picked up a lot as a genre.
People watch others play video games on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this, think about it's not exactly the same, but there's a correlation where people watching video games on YouTube, people reading about a game being played.
Yeah.
So it falls along that line. It's an interest.
And even in TV, like Once Upon a Time, I don't know if either of you have watched any of that.
Was that the one where you have like Snow White and werewolves? And
yeah, but it's like, it's almost like they're immortal, or and then they continue living in a real world scenario, and it has very similar elements, I would say, where sometimes they're aware of who they are and what they are, and then a spell like resets the whole world, and now they're completely different people, and they find out as they go that they are now, or that they once were Snow White or the Evil Queen, or
there's a long-running comic series called Fables that's very similar to that.
Yeah,
that's about these characters living out their lives in kind of burrows and stuff. Yeah. It has nothing to do with lit RPG as far as that goes.
But I mean, the point is that we're in literature and television, we're seeing this kind of surgence of characters rather, living out different lives, and it's like there's multiple layers to it that people seem to be attracted to for whatever reason.
Yeah,
and that's been picking up, it feels like. Or seeing characters in completely different situations, like what Archie and what is that called?
Riverdale,
yeah. Where that's just a completely separate take on what Archie was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you watched Riverdale?
No.
Yeah, I have absolutely zero interest in it.
Yeah, neither do I, but I know that the Kapow guys have.
Yeah, your nemesis.
Yeah.
They talk about it a lot. And I was like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a bad thing that they're interested in it. It's just a different thing.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that we're seeing these different takes and characters and different explorations into these multifaceted bits.
Mhm.
And I guess to complete my thought, I don't really know where it's coming from, because it seems like for a while everybody was just into real simple, it's right there, it's in your face, and this is how it is kind of entertainment. And then,
well, I think part of it is, and I can speak with this probably with books and publishing, but also with television, is that you have a lot more outlets.
mhm,
With publishing, instead of just having the big five who decide what you were interested in reading, now you have small publishers, micro publishers, and self publishers. So there's a bigger variety.
yeah,
Now, instead of just having CBS, NBC, and ABC, and Fox, and a few cable channels, now you've got Netflix that is making their own. You've got A&E. You've got all those different, Turner. You've got all those different venues, and they don't have to. The smaller ones don't expect to. We don't have to have 47 million people watching every episode to be successful.
right,
And so I think that freeing it up allows for more people to find their niche and what they would be interested in. And that might partly answer your question, because it's allowed to be given a shot. And
yeah,
if it doesn't work, it disappears pretty darn quick.
yeah, that's true.
So
Like
what's
Inhumans.
yeah? What's been the reception of your two books so far, Betrayal and Outpost?
They're pretty good. Most people like them. I think what happens is people will read the reviews. They should read the description and they get a kind of an idea. And at least with Amazon and some of the other vendors, they allow you to look inside,
Mhm.
and so you can kind of get an idea of what the writing's going to be like. But sometimes people will just pick up a book, like you go to the library, you say, oh, this looks good, take it off the shelf. And especially for a while, my publisher was with just those two books, or those books, it was with Kindle Unlimited, and it doesn't cost somebody anything. They got a subscription. So
Yeah.
you turn on Netflix, you start to watch a series, you don't like it, you just go to something else. It doesn't cost you anything to go to something else. It only costs you time.
Yeah.
Right.
So, people will read it, and I think most people enjoy them. I think they're pretty well written. It's not high literature. They're not going to win some Pulitzer Prize for literature or anything like that. It's just entertainment.
Yeah. So the last time you were on, Betrayal was out and you were working on Outpost?
Outpost is first, and Betrayal was Outpost. They were published about a month apart.
Oh, okay.
So my publisher wanted to try to have them in close release.
Right.
Because if you start a series, sometimes people are hesitant to move into it if they don't know if there's ever going to be a second book, or
Yeah.
they don't
Right.
want to wait a long time.
Makes sense.
And so I teach, I do a lot of other stuff. I don't have zillions of hours to write
Right.
and to get things taken care of. So during the summer, I try to put at least 5 hours a day into writing or something writing related or more.
Right.
And I can't do that when I'm grading papers and teaching and doing village council. And I have a family. They probably want to see me sometime. Church, friends. I listen to podcasts. I'd have to stop doing that too.
Yeah.
yeah, don't
So,
do that.
Yeah.
don't ever
Yeah.
stop. Don't ever leave us,
But,
Terry.
so there's other things you want to do in life besides just sit and write.
Sure.
And so during the summer, I have a better time at doing that. So I'll probably get one more book written in the series. I'm finishing up a novella right now. It's
Right.
actually, I'm just polishing it up. It'll go to an editor, and my publisher has looked it over and said he'll publish it. And so then I've got another book that I am going to write in the Monsters, Maces, and Magic. Then I'm going to probably go back to one of my other series again.
Okay.
And
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. Was you were talking about the lit RPGs, especially
Mhm.
being kind of shorter and quicker for you to write
Mhm.
because it's content that you're pretty familiar with, and it's not something that you have to do a lot of research
right,
for.
science fiction takes me a lot longer to write than fantasy.
Yeah.
But even with fantasy, and what I've done is I have a chart and I keep records of information so that I can look it up so that you're consistent.
Yeah.
Or like character names and
character
stuff?
names, places, descriptions, distances, where something is located relative to another,
Yeah.
Oh,
those
okay.
kind of things, so that you're kind of consistent.
Speaking of characters, and this is a complete aside, I was listening. I got back into finally listening to Bloodsword.
Mhm.
I had started off, and then I didn't really have the money to continue with my Audible thing. And you can still listen to the books if you're not paying for it, I think.
Really?
But I don't remember.
Once you've
be perfectly
downloaded
sure.
it, you don't have to be a member anymore. You have it still, but you
Yeah.
can't. They give you new ones, or you get a credit for new ones,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something like that. Yeah.
Right. So for one reason or another, I hadn't found the time to get back into listening to the books, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to. And then I started working out at work and found that it's going to be easiest for me to listen to a book while I'm walking around the store for 10,000 steps. Because that's fun. 4 miles of walking. But anyway, so I was listening to it, and the narrator of the book, there's a character in there called Grimsby,
Hmm.
if you remember Grimsby.
A little bit. I've written a lot of characters, but yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a starchy lady.
Yeah. And exactly my point, starchy lady, and the narrator just as he continues on, he doesn't have a huge range of voices like I do, all kinds of voices, high, low, mids, whatever, different accents and stuff. But the more the book dragged on, the more Grimsby seemed to have a male inflection as we went, and it got to the point. That's why I wanted to ask you if she was a lady, because the more it went on, I kept getting more and more unsure, and I didn't want to rewind it all the way back to.
I understand. Well, I tell you what, I've asked a couple of the narrators that have done my books.
Yeah.
It's hard. Some of them just remember, but some of them will do a recording of recurring characters.
That's
and
exactly
they
what
keep a
I would
file.
have to do. Yeah.
And then I asked him the question. I said, well, that's nice, but like when you record your voice, it doesn't sound like what you hear in your head. So how do you sort that out? But somehow they do it.
Well, I will tell you from somebody who has been listening to my voice for the past few years now
Mhm.
and doing the editing. When you first start doing something like that, you don't sound anything like you think you sound.
Mhm.
But after a while, you get used to your own voice. And when you do different voices, you can tell which voices you're.
You know what you're doing. And
Yeah.
see, it's really hard with my books because I have a lot of characters
Yeah.
that come through. I think that the characters are different and they're memorable. You can remember who they are.
Yeah, like Grimsby absolutely
Yeah.
stands out to me, and just her starchiness and all. But also now, because of
Mm-hmm.
this, she stands out to me even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Well, he made it work.
yeah,
Just not maybe how you expected.
yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, the trick that I try to do with that is, I know some writers, especially those starting out, they have this whole ensemble of characters that they want, and they want to introduce them all at once.
Yeah,
And they don't mean anything to you. They're not anybody. But like you both have, Flankhawk, he starts out, Flankhawk, he gets connected with one mercenary, Road Toad.
yeah,
And then it's Pop's Weasel. And
Yeah.
then, he gets, all the other ones, Short Two Blades. And there's a whole bunch of other ones that come and go. But then when they come back, you kind of remember because you have a connection that you know who they are, not only by their name, but their relationship to one of the other characters.
Yeah.
And so that's a easier way to remember. You're like, oh, I kind of remember him because he hated Ruse, or he
right.
something like that.
And the mercenary names is a really good idea, especially if you're going to have them coming and going,
Mhm.
as is the way of a mercenary anyway.
Yeah.
So having them be given a title by their fellow mercenaries, like Flying Hawk or
As opposed to just like Jeff and Greg.
yeah. But that definitely helps out with that, because they're usually fairly memorable names,
Mhm.
and in those stories that the way you got that name was by accomplishing something.
Somebody named you for something you did or didn't
Yeah,
do.
exactly. What is, if Lily, because this just happened recently, and because I got about halfway through the book but something happens with Lily, and
They kind of decide what her name would
yeah,
be.
if she was
Yeah.
a mercenary, Quick Shield, I think is what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really weird to be listening to a book because I used to read all the time when I was a kid. I would read Lord of the Rings and got through all sorts of different books, and I just don't read anymore. And I've noticed as I've gotten older, my reading comprehension is not as astute as it once was. I can remember bits and pieces of Lord of the Rings that I read years ago, even before the movies were out. Although when the movies came out, I was able to point out things that I knew that they had taken liberties with.
So you're one of those nerds, huh?
Oh, I was, yeah. For that,
Where's
anyway.
Tom Bombadil?
No, where was he? But
I think the movie probably did better without him.
yeah, it was a really
Odd sequence.
yeah, absolutely. And they kind of did with that other wizard.
The guy with the rabbit sled.
Yeah. So going back to it's weird to be listening to a book and keeping my reading comprehension going for that, because honestly, I'm a little surprised that I remembered some of the things that I remembered.
I think part of it is, I can't speak for you,
Right.
but it depends on your purpose again for reading.
Yeah.
And if you're reading just for yourself, or if you're reading, like, I don't know if you read with and you discuss the books with your friends
Mhm.
at all, you're going to remember more because you're going to think, oh man, I got to tell Brandon about this.
Right. Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
that will anchor it more. If you're just reading the book to yourself and, oh, that was interesting, but it just doesn't dig in. But if there's a purpose behind it, Brandon's going to think this is funny, or I bet Brandon thinks this is stupid, type thing.
Right.
Then it's going to be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And also
you're going to have a better chance of remembering it if you vocalize it.
Yeah, and you get away from reading, so that kind of atrophies. But also, if you're reading a bunch of books, you're going to be comparing them to what you've just read. How's it like this? How's it different? And all those things, when you bring it back up in your thoughts, that's what anchors it. And that's why Lord of the Ring has been anchored. And I bet when you do read some of the stuff you read now, if you read Flankhawk, for example, or you read Bloodsword or Soulforge, you probably can compare and say, well, that's kind of, this character is kind of like somebody in Lord of the Rings, maybe.
Mm.
You might, or I don't know.
Right. I don't know if I've run into that yet. I don't know if my thinking will go that far. It might now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, I don't know. And as I said, maybe it's,
Yeah.
I'm no two readers are alike, and what you pull away from a story is going to be totally different from what Brandon pulls away from his story.
Right.
And I think I talked about this before in a previous podcast.
Yeah, the last one, I think we had talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Did you find yourself kind of changing your expectations for how you wrote after Outpost came out versus Betrayal? Like, did you see, well, you wrote them so close together, I guess.
Yeah,
that you
they
didn't
were-
really have time to
they
see.
were already, and I'm not, the ones I'm writing the way that I am. I'm not rewriting them to match other readers' expectations, because they're going to either read it or they're not. And so then I'll get that set of readers, but then the other readers, Outpost has done pretty well.
Mhm.
I can't complain about it. I don't talk about specific numbers, but I bet it's already like number 5 in all my books sales.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
It just picked up a lot. And, it's going to take a lot. By far, Relic Tech is way ahead. I can tell you that if I think it's going on 6,000 sales.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Something. So it's going to take a long time to catch that one.
Is that because Relic Tech came out,
2013, maybe.
but it was before the first Civilization series, or was
No,
it?
I wrote it before, but
Right, that's
those
right.
were published before.
That's right. So do you think that's just because people have more of an interest in sci-fi necessarily?
Military sci-fi or paramilitary sci-fi has a pretty core, solid readership.
Okay, gotcha.
There's a lot of people that really like that.
I haven't got into
And
this
so,
yet.
and by far, for example, Flankhawk has sold a lot more print books than Relic Tech. Relic Tech is probably 95% ebooks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Huh.
So, it's just different audiences.
Yeah.
And
now, is that ebooks alone or also the audio?
the audio is probably sold, and I'm just guessing 350
Okay.
copies maybe. And I don't know if that's good or bad.
Right. Yeah.
I can just tell you what it is.
That's relatively that's a relatively nebulous market, I think.
Well, I think it's good for my publisher. He has authors that do far better than I do, and authors that don't do as well as I do.
Yeah.
And I just look at it, when I write a book, I try to think from my publisher's point of view, will he at least break even or make money on it? Because it's a business decision.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I guess by the time you pay for editing and you pay for cover and ISBN, and I don't know about marketing, how much that costs and stuff, but he probably, for books to break even, they probably have to sell 450 books before it breaks even, before he starts making money.
Right.
So I look at it like that. And so I write books that are at least going to do that.
Right.
That I believe will do that. And even then you have to think, as a publisher, do I want a book that's just barely going to make me money, or do I want to go with somebody else who's going to make me a lot? Because I only have so much time and resources to spend. So
sure.
It's challenging.
Is it worth it to find a cover artist and to do all the marketing for a book that's going to give me such a small return versus, like you said, another author who might sell thousands more copies?
And then you also have the fact that, the size of the publisher themselves, what they're willing to take a risk on versus what, because the likelihood of Griffinwood Press publishing a Stephen King novel.
Zero.
Exactly. But, could there be a Stephen King talent that could come out of Griffinwood Press that could bolster their sales enough to start getting bigger names?
Very successful authors. Some of them still publish with them. Some of them, one gentleman, Jim Bernheimer, he writes some really fantastic stuff. He self-published some of his own. He's still got some titles with my publisher, and then he has his own publisher. Or he's opened at Amber Cove Press, and he's got some really talented authors with that are doing really well. I mean, they just do dozens of times better than me, I can tell, because you can look at just the number of reviews that they have on their works, or who they're getting to do the like the audio books and those kind of things. And they have just some talent, and they're just the funny stuff. Like C.T. Phipps is pretty funny with him and does some good writing.
So we keep bouncing kind of back and forth between your titles, which I think having you on for the fourth time is the inevitable road that we'll go down with this. As we kind of catch up on the titles and I get around to reading whatever I get around to reading to. But a question that I had, because I've always had a fascination with languages. In First Civilization, there is a lot of languages that are referenced. And this is kind of a post-apocalyptic fantasy survival series. So what popped up into my head as a question to ask is, are these languages that are mentioned, are they based on languages from 2,000 years ago? Like the Crusaders, for instance. Is it is the Crusader tongue Italian, or maybe French or something with a really, because they're Christians, they're monotheistic.
I thought about that, but I've seen people who, in like role-playing games, they'll say the dwarves speak German and the hobbits speak Spanish and the elves speak French and the humans speak English. And kind of like Robert Bevins, where the crow's Elvish, you have to speak it with a British accent, and then you're I just thought that was funny. But no, I didn't really think that far in saying, the Crusaders kind of speak more of an Old English. And I picked that to stand apart, to show that they are saying something, their language is more established, older than the mainland.
Well, that, and if their if their religion is based off of Christianity, where the Bible itself has a lot of that kind of speech,
and that's where it stuck. And because when I thought about it, I said, you know what, this is a couple thousand years in the future, nobody speaks the Egyptian and the languages, so it's going to have morphed, have been changed.
Right, yeah. And I figure it would be a
Yeah.
pale comparison
Yeah, and
of
so-
what it was at the time. But,
So, we couldn't probably even understand people speaking the Old English of 1,000 years ago.
Try reading Shakespeare sometime.
Well, but they even a little bit before him, he's 1400s.
Yeah.
I mean, you go a little bit, it's just,
Crap, now I can't remember that old author before Shakespeare.
Chaucer?
Chaucer?
Canterbury Tales?
Yeah.
yeah.
God,
So
that one is rough.
So the
Yeah.
words are just different. The context is,
yeah.
and the pronunciations are different.
Yeah.
I just figured it's a whole different language. Maybe it's a remnant of English, or maybe it's a remnant of French,
Right.
or something, but it's going to be totally different. So I just didn't mess with it.
That's
So
fair.
do they have like a fake language in this book? Like whenever the Crusaders talk, is it just in another language that we can't understand?
No, I don't think you ever actually wrote out any
No.
I think the only ones that you ever
There's like the foul tongue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is the foul tongue is the stuff that you've written.
Yeah, and
in,
then there is actual, in the first book, there's actual German spoken.
yeah.
That is actual German. I had a friend, a college roommate, David Tallman. His wife is German, and
Yeah.
she speaks English. So I sent her the dialogue and asked her to translate it,
Yeah,
and she did.
that's good.
In the Monsters, Maces, and Magic book series, different monsters have different languages that they speak. Is that based off of anything? Like whenever they run across the goblins will
I just
talk in
make
a
up language for them. It's not a particular language. I just
didn't know
make
if
up
you-
words and I create what I think they would sound like
Yeah,
saying it, and then I just create a dictionary. And
So you
just-
do have a dictionary that you use?
for translation the words. Yeah. So
Okay.
I have it be just like Google Translate.
okay.
Put in the words or phrase.
Yeah. And
And
that's kind of along where I was going with that, is that especially like for the foul tongue in for civilizations and for the creatures. And,
Yeah, I don't get into it like Tolkien, where I create
Right.
entire languages.
But,
and,
I mean-
and the different syntax and
Yeah.
all.
but
don't
he
have
was
that
a
kind-
linguist. Like
but
that was his
but
first job.
That would take an awful lot of time,
yeah.
and it's not important to telling the story.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are many people who say that Tolkien's books were based around languages and not around actual storytelling. In fact, a lot of people who rate authors say he was a terrible author because he doesn't do any character exploration or exposition or fleshing out of a character. He just throws a character, I'm the son of this, the son of that, the son of that, and then he kills him. or then he goes on a long trek or a story, and you only know the basest amount of things, and it's just telling that story. There's no callback to anything else. Where you at least have some of that in that series, and I'm sure your other series as well, where as I've been listening to Bloodsword, I'm getting visions of when I listened to Flankhawk. And when I restarted it because I had listened to a couple 3 hours before I ended up putting it down for whatever reason. And so I started over again and caught myself back up, and all of the stuff was starting to fall back into place. So you do a very good job of calling back to the previous titles within the series, which is nice.
Yeah, that was something that I thought was important, and I think we did talk about it the first or second time I was here about writing a novel and writing the second one, so you can pick it up and start at the second one, but it brings back it's a delicate balance because you don't want to repeat too much stuff for people who have read the first one.
Yeah.
And
But you need to go back and forth because some people will binge read and read it right then and there. But
yeah,
my thought is if they're binge reading, they're reading quickly.
yeah,
And so those little callbacks or reminders and stuff are important, but you don't want to do it too much.
a very good case in point for that is when he meets Thomas for the first time in Bloodsword, who's a crusader who was in the battle that one of the big battles, the first big battle that Flankhawk was in
Where
with
the prince nearly got killed.
Yeah, exactly. Where we first see the Bloodsword, if I remember correctly. And Flankhawk basically has a flashback of this battle, and you recall all of these bits and pieces from the battle. And I was like, okay, there was a part of me as a reader who was like, okay, I remember this. I've heard it. I know it. But there were also just enough new bits where you were working in that it wasn't stale.
Well, thanks. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
For you, at least.
Yeah, for me at least. So, but there were some parts where I was like, okay, yeah, I remember this. Let's move on.
But I'm remembering back to writing that because I wrote.
Yeah, this is a while ago.
I wrote that
everybody.
about 2010.
Yeah.
So that's a long time ago writing. But I do remember writing that, and I was thinking, Flankhawk would have no idea that Thomas was in that battle, but Thomas knew he was in the battle.
Yeah.
And remembered it. And Flankhawk had remembered those Crusaders marching up, and he was running to protect the prince, and he felt bad because short two blades. I don't want to destroy it for a lot of people, but there was Pop's Weasel and all those other mercenaries are there too. And you recall back what happened to all those people, but it was something that I thought this would be what he would be thinking. And I thought the readers would be thinking, he'd try to remember back, oh my gosh, all that stuff happened to all those people.
Yeah.
And I thought he was dead and this guy actually lived. Now he came out pretty messed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a good visitation to the past book, or to that first big battle that Flankhawk was really involved in.
And I thought with the Thomas character, he could have either been a bitter person or just, it happened, I did what I had to do.
Yeah. I like that better too, to be perfect. I don't, but then again, that's also a very personal thing. I don't like super bitter characters. I mean, they serve their purpose, but usually I'd like to see them get killed off pretty quickly. But somebody who has that moral duty, like Thomas was very, this is what I was here to do, and I defended my people, and
paid the price.
I paid the price, but I'm still alive to tell the tale. And and he plays a kind of a small but pivotal role when they get to the Crusaders' land as well. So it was a cool departure and a cool character to meet.
How much of your books would you say you write looking forward, saying I'm going to introduce a character now that's just going to be introduced and do a little bit, knowing that if I write a third book, they're going to have this part in the third book?
Some. I have plans for some of the characters, and some of them, you have them in your arsenal, so to speak, and you'd say, well, he would play a good part.
Yeah. Okay.
He should do this, they should do this, because it makes sense. I would create a new character if it didn't make sense, but why not use somebody who's been there before? In the books moving forward, I mean, Road Toad or Major Jad plays a pretty big part in the first novel, but he plays lesser parts in the novels moving forward.
Yeah.
Because he has a different role in respect to the main character.
Yeah.
But he's still an active character. He still does stuff for the kingdom. It's just that their paths cross and they have a different relationship too. Flankhawk and Road Toad or Major Jad, because he reverted to his former name.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Because I know that we've talked before about how you write that you know what all the major beats are going to be. In a novel for sure. Yeah. And I have, like with Monsters, Maces, and Magic, I know if I ever get to the end, I know how it'll end. But there's a lot to go in between, and I don't have every book plotted out. I think I was telling Remington, I don't know if it was while we were on, but I have like 5 planned out at least for the Flankhawk series when I get around to writing them. Oh, okay.
And I have for the Relic Tech series, the First Civilization, the Cracks War Chronicles, I actually have like one of the last scenes written for that already. So I know how that's going to end, where it's going to. And so, with different things, but no, I don't have all my characters. I don't know when a character is created, if everything that they're going to do, the secondary characters. I have a pretty good idea with the main characters, but the secondary ones, not so much.
Okay, so do you have points though where you'll introduce a character in a book and think like, "Oh, just wait, readers, just wait until the next book when this guy really pops off"?
Can you say that again? I didn't understand what you're
saying. Yeah, like do you ever introduce a character who's a secondary character in a book, being excited to think, okay, this character may not be very big in this book, but just wait, next book I already know that he's going to play a very pivotal
Yeah, I have
role.
some of those. Like,
Okay.
there's a couple of them. I don't want to give too much away with the monsters, maces, and magic, but there's a couple characters that, like, you just finished Betrayal.
Mhm.
Did you notice, like, the one mercenary? I forgot his name because I changed his name twice or three times in the one that tried to stop them after they left town.
The Crow Lord.
Yeah, the Crow Lord.
Mhm.
Yeah, he. I was trying. His name begins with an M, I think. Anyways, but he reappeared later. But I knew he would. And then the lady that was fighting out in front of the silversmiths.
Yeah.
I knew that she was coming back, and they may play a part later on in other books as well. Now, I don't necessarily know how many parts that they'll play, but recurring characters are kind of handy like that. In the Cracks War Chronicles, there's a lot of characters that come back that survive because a lot of them die. But, if you've read those, they come, they play different parts, even some small ones. Like there's a maintenance guy, Segretti. He plays a small part. He makes some brass knuckles in one book, and then he plays a little bit bigger part in the other book. And the main character finds out that, well, actually he's working for the military as one of their intelligence people, because the military doesn't trust the official intelligence agency. So they have their own people that do stuff too.
Right.
And so you find out, Craw finds out that that's what he's doing, because it seems kind of funny why he's there, and he figures it out. And so, I knew that the Segretti guy, what he was really doing.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I needed a person to play that part, that's one of the examples I said, I need a guy to do this. Segretti's a perfect guy because this is his history.
Yeah.
He'll fit in there.
Okay.
So yeah, there are, but, or I could have easily written another character, but why not just pick one from before? And then you get readers who say, that's too much coincidence that guy showed up again.
But at
it's
the same,
it's a whole freaking big universe. How could that happen? But with Segretti, there's a reason why it happened.
Yeah.
and at the same time, this kind of circles back to the way J.R.R. Tolkien wrote, where he would. That's kind of what you're talking about. He would just introduce a new character to do the thing, to be the thing.
Right.
Where this, you're weaving the story, you're doing character development, and this guy comes back in way later, and all of a sudden he's top shit.
Yeah,
So-
and I just finished a series, mostly listening, but I've read some by Kevin Hearn, the Iron Druid Chronicles, and he's one who there's small little characters that show up, and then 4 books down the road they've got a pivotal part,
Yeah,
and you're like, well, this person just was a small little bookstore owner.
yeah,
Yeah.
And then it comes to play that person did something pivotal that somewhere in between affected the course of the storyline. Or, he talked about this little thing, he knew about in one of his books, he's got a map to whatever one of the Spanish explorers, and then it comes to be pivotal or important 7 books later. He's much better, obviously, planning than me. Although I think he also talked about that. And sometimes you plant stuff and it may never grow.
yeah.
Or there's an author, Terry Mixon, was just talking about that. And sometimes you plant stuff and it just never happens, but you plant something and sometimes it's there for you to use.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where the story's going to go.
That's something I've done in running D&D campaigns, which I know isn't the same as writing a novel, although it's kind of in the same vein as you're
building an
creating
RPG a
something.
little bit.
I would do in D&D all the time, as I would just plant seeds everywhere, knowing that if I needed a character to show up later, at least I like that in my own readings that I do. I think it's cool when a character that you were introduced to as a side character suddenly shows back up and you can be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
So I would do that a lot in my own DMing,
Mhm.
is introduce all of these characters knowing that I could have one of them come back later.
And Remington probably can speak to characters you playing like that.
You probably don't remember.
Oh, I did. I thought he ran in your worlds.
He did.
Yeah.
Remington is just a dwarven fighter.
Every time.
Remington just wants to hit stuff with an axe or a hammer.
Well, I mean, do you have an example character? Like,
Well, an example that I can think of recently would be Mittens, the druid cat.
yeah,
The cat who was just written as a side character
yeah,
that John went and talked to. And then what had happened is I was describing a magical city that they went into, and one of the things I was describing was a magical talking cat who was getting in a fight with a lizard man, a drunken lizard man who was throwing up on the sidewalk. And this was just to add flavor to this magical town they were in. Well, one of the characters picked those out of the lineup of everything I described and said, I want to go talk to them. So suddenly I had to make up this story of why this cat and this drunken lizard man are traveling around together.
Okay.
Well, he ends up befriending them and they follow our group. So they become part of the party. Well, the whole story, and I'll try to make this as short as possible, is they were going up against this evil druid. Well, they managed to go back in time to see where this druid turned evil, and I threw Mittens, the cat, in as this druid's familiar. It was a last minute thing, but they were watching kind of through history. They were seeing, like watching an old fashioned movie. You know, they could see the ghosts of what was playing out, and the cat was there. And that became this major plot point of like, why was the cat there? You didn't tell us you were his familiar. And that all sparked from me just describing a background scene of this magical talking cat.
Right.
And that's the best too, because now that you're saying that, I never would have realized that wasn't where you were going with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's so wonderful to know the backstory of that.
Yeah, and I would do stuff like that all the time. There was another character in that same campaign very early on who was a British voice slow character. Like, he was very stupid. Not slow is the wrong term.
It's fine, Brandon.
You know what I mean.
Stupid isn't any nicer than saying slow.
But you guys saved his life because he was so dumb.
Yeah.
That you felt bad for him. And he ended up playing a big part later on when you guys were given a house. You ended up making him like the steward of the entire house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he had a backstory written. Had you guys ever gone back to that house, you guys ended up getting into time stream stuff. But had you gone back, there was a whole story. Like, he was doing stuff while you guys were gone.
Yeah.
And I planned on writing him in later again.
That's cool.
Just because he was a character that you recognized, and it's easier than trying to write a million new characters.
Right, absolutely.
So yeah, stuff like that I really enjoy. And in your book specifically, there's a character that you kind of introduced in Betrayal, but you didn't introduce him specifically, and I wonder whether the Birdman, do you remember who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Whether that's a character that's going to play a part in it later, or whether that was just kind of
some people who are listening to this know I ran a character named the Birdman, so it's kind of on him, but kind of not.
Oh, okay. So he was based off a character that you did?
I ran. Yeah. And the reason I did that is because I'll know that character. I didn't have to write a lot of stuff down.
Right.
So I will remember that because I will remember it. So I could just have Birdman. Oh, yeah, I remember what this guy's like.
Was he a magic user?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've run in a lot of campaigns, haven't you? Over the years, you've played in a lot of campaigns.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character that you've played? Or either
probably
that you've
Birdman
played?
was probably one of my favorite. I ran a guy named the Axeman too. He started out as a ranger. I just, I can just make this super short. He started out as a ranger, and we were running him, and some thief tried to backstab him. And he's like, ha, 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 I backstabbed you. I rolled this much damage, 14 points or something like that. You're dead because you're a fighter. I said, I'm a ranger, you idiot. I got 2 hit points left. And I cut him up.
Oh, nice.
And then he was crawled down this hole to try and get one of our dwarven characters out. And then he helped the dwarf out to get out of this pit. And then the dwarf cut the rope or something like that and said, we're just leaving you there. What? So then he finally got out and went and killed the dwarf. He said, being this good guy ranger's crap. I'm giving it up. So he just became a neutral fighter and just with ranger hit points.
Yeah.
That's
so,
funny.
those things are, so you remember those kind of characters.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I got something for you, Brad. I want to show you this here.
Okay. Oh, man.
Yeah, I went through, remember, I don't know if you guys saw, but I posted on Flankers. I had drawn somebody, because I pick people to name characters in books.
Yeah.
And I draw from people who are in Flankers and on my mailing list.
Uh-huh.
And the first person that I drew, it was been about 10 days. I email them, and then actually it's been about 14 days, 2 weeks. I email them 1 week, and then I email them another week if they are interested, and this person never got back to me. So I drew some guy's name that says Shoes, or their email is something.
Someone's stolen shoe?
Yeah. And so then that turned out to be your name.
Yeah. Oh, that is awesome. So I get to name a character in
the
next
book.
novel.
And it's either going to, the working title's up there at the top.
Mhm.
It's either going to be Fairied or Fade. I'm not sure which one. Fairied, like F-A-I-R-Y-E-D. It's not a real word.
Yeah. So somebody's getting ferried.
Mm-hmm.
This is awesome.
So that's a contract that you have to
Ooh.
read and sign.
How long do I have to come up with a name?
Well, what
Official.
we'll do is we'll work on it. It basically and I've had like Jerome, you just read the last book.
Oh, was that
That was
somebody's name?
That was somebody who made up a character's name,
Okay.
and Thunder Wells was actually not a character in the book. Luther was like the guy who trained the main character, the survivor. Did you read Thunder Wells?
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy who kind of trained Jack.
Yeah, like the guy that he
the
traveled
guy that
around
was
with for a
buried
while.
and died beforehand. That was somebody it was her grandfather who had died, so she wanted him named.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we worked out, something like that.
Oh, nice.
So, you just pick. So he was a person that was there that had an influence, but wasn't really there. And she was cool with that. She thought that was really good.
Yeah.
So what you do is you'll
So
work with
what he's trying to say is you have some big shoes to fill.
No, what happens is we'll talk or we'll email and you decide what kind of character you want. A good guy, bad guy.
Bad guy.
What kind of personality traits that you think you would like.
Okay.
Any, things that you'd like tried to be worked in. And like with Jerome, it was with him, the girl wanted somebody who would say something that's obvious.
Yeah,
And
that
he was
came across.
He's like a mercenary that hired man at arms, and he would just say some really obvious things already. And it's like, okay. But he's kind of smart, but he's just kind of, Mr. Obvious.
Yeah.
He would say stuff like, I don't think this is actually an example in the book, but stuff like, we need to set up a night watch. And he'd be like, oh, we need a night watch because at night things are darker and it's hard to see. Like stuff like that.
Right, yeah. And this will be for the next...
Yes, the next book that I'm going to be starting as soon as I finish editing the novella Guild.
Okay.
Which will be published, right? The
Yeah.
novella. Okay.
Yeah, my publisher looked at it and he said he's interested. So that's always the thing. You just never know. You write and you hope that he thinks, my publisher looks at it, and then he will, because he freelances editors and cover artists and stuff, and he has to think it's worth it.
So let me ask you this. Would it behoove Brandon, because this is happening in an RPG setting, to just build a D&D character and a backstory to go along with it and just fax that to you?
Yeah, it could. But
that way you have your stats as well.
Yeah, I can show them what the stat, because all my characters have stat sheets that I work from and I look at.
Right.
So, like some of the people that read my novel, like they complained because they didn't get to see the character stat sheets.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I just didn't publish them. They talked about them and talked about their stats.
You need to
but
absolutely put that at the end of your books. Oh, come on. That would be so good, though, for those guys. Because maybe just as an aside, you've got the people who like the crunchy style, and they're not super fan of just the softer style, but you might be able to pull them back in just by releasing the stat sheet at the end, and then they can come back and reread it and be like, okay.
maybe
yeah.
I'll think about that.
I don't know.
I mean,
just
because
a thought.
I do have the stat sheets because I look at them, I work them, but
Yeah.
I don't actually sit down and during the combat roll a d20.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Because it's fiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Remington.
Yeah.
Although I did read that
Stupid.
there was one lit RPG author, I don't remember his name, I'd read somewhere on a blog or on a forum that he actually did that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
I couldn't do that.
That's a hell of a way to write a story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, an adventure goes that way,
Yeah.
but
That would seem very time consuming to do that.
yeah. But see, that's just it. With some of the lit RPG books, they're like that. They have all that information,
Yeah.
and there's people that just like to crunch numbers, and they like to see the percentages, the odds, and how you can manipulate those things and to your advantage and stuff. Just like people do when you're playing a video game. When you play a video game, don't you try to max out or figure out what's the best combination to go to? And so that's one of the things about the crunchy lit RPG is that that's what they're into.
to me, the idea of just putting it at, say, the end of the series or something, or the end of each book that you do for the characters that were involved, especially because you do it, you make their stat sheet, is almost like watching the extras at the end of a movie or the outtakes.
It could be, but what I want to avoid is like you've ever GM'd or DM'd or whatever you want to call it, where you could add up every goblin you kill plus their hit points is so many experience points, and every gold piece you collect is this. And I don't want to get into that because I talk about like how many experience points, but then I kind of estimate. I don't count up in the book how many, just because like when I run a D&D campaign, I have a pretty good idea about how much it is.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, you each get about 800 experience points, plus I tell them if you did anything exceptional, tell me, and then you can player character type thing. But I don't want to be to the point where the crunchy numbers are, how did they get?
You've grossly misrepresented how much experience
he
they were
should be
getting.
at least 300 points more than what he has.
Yeah, sure.
And
I understand.
I don't
that.
have the time to do that because that's just not that. I'm more interested in the storytelling, and I keep it really close. I know when they're about how many points they are away, because I kind of jot off. I say, well, they just fought 15 goblins. They just defeated them.
Yeah.
All right, so I brought a game.
Okay.
I brought a game that I worked on last night.
You and your games.
Well, because the first time you were here, I don't know if you remember, Terry, I had a turtle quiz.
Yes.
Well, the last 2 times I haven't had anything, and I feel like I really slacked off.
That's not entirely true. I think the second time around you had like a quiz about characters in his books or something.
No, we had a game for the audience. That was at the end. We asked a couple questions, and if they would send the answers to us, they would win a copy of one of Terry's books.
Right. Gotcha.
So this is a game that I worked on last night, and it is called Role-Playing Game or Role-Playing Goof. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a description of a game to you guys, and you are going to choose yourselves whether it's a game or a goof, and then I'll reveal who the winner is, and you get points for it.
Like online games?
Pen and paper role-playing games.
Okay.
So these are titles of games that could potentially exist.
Or they do exist, or you just made it up out of
some of them exist, some of them I made up.
So you got to say fake or real.
But you have to say game or goof.
Okay, game.
You have to use the terminology. A
Terry.
A game is one that exists. A goof is one that I made up.
Are you gonna like try and trademark this or something?
Yes, that's why. So it's role playing game or role playing goof. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Number 1. This one is called Ghost Dog: Way of the Samurai. This 1999 game has 1 player and 1 GM reenacting the plotline of the Forrest Whitaker movie of the same name, Ghost Dog.
I'll say goof.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with goof.
That would be a game.
Really?
It is an actual role-playing game where you just reenact the plotline of the movie Ghost Dog: Way of the Samurai starring Forrest Whitaker.
Was that an actual movie or something?
Yes. From 1999.
I hadn't seen the movie.
I had never heard of the movie either. Basically, what I did is I Googled weird RPGs.
Okay.
And then found the weirdest ones I could.
Hey, don't give away the magic.
I knew all of these already. Number 2, this one is called 11 Sailors. Each player outside of the GM controls 11 sailors as they train on the high seas in order to become pirates. Role-playing game or role-playing goof?
I'm goofing again.
Really? Are you? I'm going to go with game then, because this sounds legitimate.
Terry gets the point on that one. That is a role-playing goof.
Shit. I know you well enough to know that was a goof.
The title really made me laugh. 11 Sailors. Number 3, Autumn Leaves: An Experience. This game sees the players role-playing as a leaf undergoing the changes into autumn, with chlorophyll rolls just one example of the excitement you can expect.
If this was a real game, I bet it didn't go very far. What's it called?
Autumn Leaves: An Experience.
I'll say game.
I'm going to say game because Autumn Leaves, the experience sounds pretentious enough to be real.
An experience.
An experience.
And
Apologies.
that one's a goof. That one I made up.
Damn. So we both got that one wrong then. Or
Yeah. I said real.
You said real? Okay.
Yeah. Number 4. This one's called.
I just saw that as some therapy session.
Yeah.
I tried to make it sound as boring and weird as possible. And I was trying to think of like the most pretentious name I could, and Autumn Leaves and Experience really hit it for me. This one's called Mechanical Dream. Another surreal RPG where the character's survival revolves around a seasonal fruit called an Orpie.
An Orpie?
An Orpie.
That's cute.
A seasonal fruit called an Orpie.
So this is a pen and paper RPG game.
Yes, all of these are pen and paper.
Did there have to be any measure of success to qualify?
No, not particularly. They were published, is what I based it off of. So not like a weird online one, like one page. These had to be actually published.
I'm going to say goof, and the only reason I'm saying that is because you said another.
That I did.
Oh, he's playing the. See, now I don't know. Now I want to say goof too. But I'm going to say game just because statistically speaking, we're up for another proper game.
Remington, you are right. Statistically speaking, this is a game.
Yes.
This one I almost took off the list because it was so weird to describe, and I was trying to make as short of a description for each of these as possible. There's like 8 races, and you live in a world with 2 competing suns. And the Orpie fruit, like each session is a season, and then your characters all die off when the fruit dies off, and then the next session is another season.
Role play it?
You're insects. I don't know how you role play, but you role play as insects, as mechanical insects.
Okay.
So you would be a firefly. I would be something. Number 5, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. A Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book that got in hot water for allowing you to roll on a sexual deviance chart that included homosexuality as one of your sexual deviancies.
So repeat that, because I don't think that the deviancy it got in trouble because of the deviancy.
Yeah.
Because
but
there was
a role-playing game.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
There was a sexual deviancy chart that included like pedophilia, bestiality, and homosexuality was on that chart.
I guess it could be real because people can make bad choices, but man, you'd have to get permission to use, I would imagine, trademark Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now I'll say against it because I can't see them going for that right away, and unless they just wrote it off. I'll say it's not real.
You're going goof?
Yeah.
I'm going to go goof too.
That is a game. It is a 1989 game, back when Ninja Turtles were still adult.
Yeah.
There was also a mental illness chart you could roll on.
Wow. We're bad at this.
Maybe we should just count off if it's a game that I would play.
Number 6. This one is called Laugh Track. This RPG tasks the GM and players with creating a sitcom. Player characters include parental figure, comedic jokester, and nosy neighbor.
I'm going real.
I'll say real.
That one's a goof.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
we're supposed to say game.
Yeah, that's right.
Then it's a goof.
That's right. I didn't repeat myself enough. Roleplay game, a roleplay goof. That one would be a goof.
Yeah, we got it wrong.
I think you're winning, Reb.
No, I've got one right and you've got one right.
Okay.
You guys are tied?
Yeah.
That's really not saying much.
No, it's not, because we've got one of 7 now, or 6 now.
We would probably do better if we just flipped a coin.
It's trying to measure what I know against Brandon versus the bullshit that I've seen out there.
There's some weird ones.
There are, and I know this to be true, but I don't know the titles of most of them.
This one is called Kobolds Ate My Baby.
Can you please repeat that, but in an Australian accent?
This one's called Kobolds Ate My Baby.
Thank you. That's much better.
Players, as kobolds, are tasked with finding the plumpest, most edible human baby for their kobold king. If you lose, the king eats you.
Are these like self-published games? Or did a corporation actually pick them up?
Some of them are self-published, but they are actually published and printed. I made sure that they were at least printed.
The look that Terry's giving you.
So, Remington, Viscount Terry W Ervin II, roleplay game or roleplay goof?
I would never play the game, so I'm going to say goof.
Game.
Remington, you got it. It is an actual game.
Okay, I can.
It is a one-session game, yeah.
You do realize when you say publish the game, just like anybody can publish anything.
But can they print it, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
You just click create space print.
Kobold's Ate My Baby actually has like a full-on printed hardcover book you can buy at Origins.
You can still self-publish this. And you can.
He's questioning your game.
Are you
Brandon.
questioning my game, Terry?
No, I'm questioning the quality.
Would you question Pat Sajak?
Yes. I'm questioning the criteria from which you chose.
The other two I had.
These are funny. They're odd games.
This one was real. Macho Women with Guns, a post-apocalyptic game that sees the players controlling buxom women as they fight demons, men, and chauvinism.
Yeah.
And this one was made up. This was my girlfriend's daughter's suggestion. Courageous Appliance. This Japanese RPG was a thinly veiled ripoff of the Brave Little Toaster, allowing the players to become one of many animated appliances.
Nice.
Disney might go for that one. Good job, Ram. You win.
I did.
You're brilliant.
Oh.
Remington got it with 2-1.
Yep. 2-1. We're both. I think we can rest assured that we won't be creating any RPGs of our own anytime soon.
No, or bad ones.
Yeah.
I guess I was just thinking, would I play it? And then I'm thinking, how would you run it as a game moderator, as a player, and why would you find enjoyment in it?
Right.
That's what got me on some of these is why would you want to, like Kobold's Ate My Baby at least sounds fun in the sense of like, if you and your friends are a bunch of kobolds and you're trying to trip each other up and it's all racing for the same goal.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's just,
there was one that didn't make the cut that was real called Veggie Patch, where you played as intelligent vegetables in a garden.
Doesn't sound.
I know they sound terrible.
You know, I guess role playing, if you've got, because I've played games a long time in the past. I played a game called Toon, where you were.
Toon almost made the list.
You were cartoons.
Yeah.
You'd make up a cartoon character.
Yeah.
And then you would role play that, and you would have one shtick or something.
How was Toon to play? Because I downloaded the rulebook for it like a month or so ago. And
it really depends on who's running the game, how creative they are.
Mm-hmm.
I played a character named Praying Mantis called Mickey Mantis, and he had his fans, his portable fans. He'd pull them out, and there's a little crowd to go, yay! And he could, he could just grab a baseball and throw it, just. That was it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a pretty cool character.
Characters like that.
Mickey Mantis.
Yeah.
Like Mickey Mantle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would just go on adventures.
I'm glad that your sports knowledge.
I know. Mickey Mantle, I got that one, right? Thumbs
yeah,
up.
good job, Brandon.
I played Morrow Project, which
was
that's a post-apocalyptic setting where the world, after a nuclear war, you were frozen for 50 years and then you come out and you try and survive.
Oh, nice.
And in a radioactive, cratered environment. I mean, there's Traveler, one of the few games that your character can actually die in character generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned that one before, too.
There's that. And Palladium.
Was that a space one?
No, that's a ripoff of, not a ripoff, it's just a variation of Dungeons and Dragons, I should say. It had its own little things that it did.
Oh, okay.
But it was kind of like Dungeons and Dragons.
One of them that almost made the list too was the Dallas role-playing game. I never really watched.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to say.
Like the TV
Dallas.
show Dallas, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what threw me off with the Ninja Turtles. I guess I was thinking about them as kids.
Yeah.
I knew they were comic books.
And I knew that they were adult at some point, but I didn't make the correlation, I guess, for that.
I almost bought that book at Trans-Allegheny Bookstore back before they closed.
Oh, nice.
It was like $3, but I passed on it like, nah, it'll be here next time. And then the whole store closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, bummer.
Yeah, like the mental illness chart, you could roll like schizophrenia and stuff.
I think I remember you actually telling me about this.
In later printings, they put like big white stickers over that part of it. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, just ignore this stuff now because they got in some hot water for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I know. So, Terry, what do you have coming up as far as if somebody wants to find you somewhere?
Well, I've got Art Affair on the Square, That's going to be the 21st of July. It's in Urbana, Ohio. And then...
And that happens every year, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be at the literary tent. It's sponsored by the Champaign County Library. I'll be there with probably 6 or 8 other authors, maybe a couple more.
Okay.
And then I will also be at the PopCon, and that's coming up in October 20th.
Yeah. So that's Parkersburg PopCon. It'll happen at the West Virginia University at Parkersburg.
Mm-hmm.
And
Stephen Hines will be there too.
yes, Stephen will also be there.
And Joshua Smith will be there.
Yes.
I believe.
So you can meet
more than likely, yeah.
pretty much everybody who's ever been on the podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So where can people find you online?
They can find me online at my website, www.ervin-author.com. I'm sure, Rem, you probably put a link.
Absolutely.
Somewhere. And that'll take you to my blog. And there's also a link for Flankers, which is a Facebook group that for people who read my books. And then there's also, if you want to join my mailing list, if you join Flankers or my mailing list, then you get to be in the drawing too for naming a character in my next book. And I just keep people's names once you're on there. You just keep getting, you're not going to win again though.
Oh man.
So I kind of pull you out.
So you better make it good.
Dueling Ogres.
That's more ridiculous the more I think about it.
And then there's also a contact email that people can contact me through my website.
Gotcha. So the Facebook group Flankers will have a link on there as well as the website. And then you'll also be able to access any of Terry's books down in the comments on the main website for us as well. We'll have links to all of those books. And Audible, if you want to try Audible, you can get a free 30-day trial and 1 free book. And if you just want to try out one of his books, you could do it there as well.
And if you don't like it, they allow you to return.
Yeah, there you go.
Fantastic.
All right, so I think that wraps us up. Terry, thank you so much for driving down and being a part of our podcast again.
Well, thanks for having me. You guys are fun. I mean, it's really odd. You wonder, because I wondered this on the way down, what were the odds that I would be Googling something about a book and came across your podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And that was it.
That is that how I don't know if you've ever actually told us the story. Is that how you came across?
I just finished one of Robert Bevan's books, and I think he had mentioned.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah,
he had mentioned you guys, and then I just looked you guys up, Googled it, and I said, "Oh, well, I'll listen to these guys, see what they got to say at least." And then I listened to it some, and you guys were good. So I mean, I came back.
Yeah. And
so that's how it happened. Just random, because I mean, let's face it, you guys live a long ways away.
Yeah.
How would, I'm a little bit older. We don't exactly have the same circles of friends. Yours is here in West Virginia.
Right.
And mine's in West Central Ohio.
Well, you also are assuming that we have friends outside of each other, and we don't even like each other that much.
Yeah. You pretend well.
Thank you.
It's a fiction.
Yeah. Later that evening, Terry found out that Remington killed Brandon and ate him.
Well, after these games, I'm not going to be surprised.
Yeah, there you go.
Role play game or role play goof.
Oh, geez. Well, we can't wait for you to come back probably next year. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah, we'll have to do it, and we'll have to see if Brandon's character is successful or if people stop reading my books.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brandon's character shows up for a quarter of a page.
God, I would feel so bad.
The door. Wrong address.
If in the Amazon reviews for your next book, everybody just talks about how much they hate that character. Really ruined the book for me.
The really sad thing is Brandon's going to go on and, the character that made the book for me.
Oh, I'm 100% going to do that.
Yes. If you have any questions or comments, or you'd like to hear yourself on air, or if you want to ask Terry any questions, he listens religiously and he will probably answer you on our Facebook.
I can do that.
You can call us at 978-DU-OGRES. That's 978-386-4737. You can also reach us on Twitter at Dueling Ogres. Email us at duelingogres@gmail.com or leave a comment on the Facebook page like these nice people, Brennan.
I didn't have it up.
He didn't have it up. Now, last week was Bucky's
Oh, yeah.
podcast, and then the week before was with Stephen Hines.
Mm-hmm.
We can do both of them.
I don't think we had any comments on Bucky's. I think we just had a bunch of shares.
Yeah, Bucky's episode was very popular, but nobody wanted to say anything about it. But as far as it goes, I'd like to make a comment. I think he did a really good job for his first podcast out.
Yeah.
Like, there was some definite awkwardness that,
It started out awkward.
Yeah.
And the language, not the language barrier, but just starting out like, I just woke up and we're getting it together. And
yeah. So, I mean, it started off a little awkward, but he recovered well and did a good interview, I think. And his interviewee, Zork, from the YouTube channel Imperial Knowledge.
Yeah.
he probably would have done very well on the goofer.
Oh, yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
I don't know. His knowledge extends just to Elder Scrolls, though, so. Although he does like to research, he said, so.
I love how much umbrage you took with the fact with my loose definition of published. All right, so we didn't have any comments on Bucky's episode, like we said. Lots of shares, though. More shares than most of our other episodes.
Yeah.
Did,
So,
actually.
what's happening with that, you guys? Come on.
Well, actually, no. We had way more shares on the episode before.
Oh, okay.
Diamond Man Stephen Hines.
Well, that's because he shared it on all 12 of his pages.
All 11, actually. 11 shares.
Is it really 11?
Yeah. Our one comment is from Viscount Terry W Ervin II, who says, "Here's my small effort to fill your milk buckets." Funniest comment, Brandon equating DMs with dog muscles. I'm really looking forward to Stephen releasing Hocus Pocus as an audiobook. A woman walking up to Stephen's table at a con, pointing to the mini comic and saying, "This is me." That says a lot. Very cool. Of course, a very interesting, possibly uncomfortable situation might occur someday if someone comes up to Stephen's table at a convention, points to Robert Jackson in valedictorian USA, and says, "This is me." Now, Robert Jackson, I cannot remember. What is the story with his character? I know he's the black character,
he's
right?
an African-American, kind of a Nazi.
Oh, yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've read that.
Stephen replied to that and said, "I did have a rather imposing African-American actor come up to me at Fandom Fest to demand what the deal was with Robert. After I explained Mr. Jackson's origin, the actor shook my hand and said that I had serious guts to have a character like him in my books."
Yeah, so that's also a very cool exchange to have.
Yeah. Now, I wish I would have known that ahead of time so we could ask him what the origin of that character was.
Yeah.
Because that would have made for some good listening.
Damn.
He might be able to post it.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Do you think he'll actually listen to an interview with you, though, or you think he'll skip it?
He'll ask me for the synopsis.
Yeah,
when school
just give me the
starts.
cliff notes, Terry.
But he does come up with unusual characters, kind of plays off on things that makes him a little bit different. So it's not any Mary Sue's or anybody like that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hey,
speaking of Steven, his Kickstarter is going on.
Yes, his Kickstarter is still live for the rest of the month. If you go over to our website, on our events page, on our little calendar, I have it posted how long it'll run. But you can also go to Kickstarter and search Soccer Mom Killer.
Yes.
And listen to my voiceover.
Yeah.
And
I did listen to that.
Did you? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's just a little bit different tone than you have here.
Good. I didn't want to vary it too much. I kind of wanted to sound like I to prep for that. I actually listened to narrators for some of these other crime drama things, true crime dramas, and I knew that there were some voices that I just couldn't mimic. But I figured if I went with kind of an older gentleman feel with a little more scratch, a little more gravel in the voice, but not overly weird or anything, that it would play well. So hopefully it did.
Yeah, I think you did a good job. It turned out well.
But go over to the Kickstarter, search that up, and drop some love Steven's way. I am actually pretty excited to see this story kick off as well.
Yeah.
No
pun definitely intended.
No pun intended. I totally didn't mean to say kick off, but it works.
You
Whatever.
gotta cover it. You gotta be like, yeah, I totally meant that.
No, I didn't. I'm an honest man.
Honest to a fault. Remington Hitchcock.
Go! Make sure to subscribe on our website at duelingogres.com for news, shows, and articles pertaining to some of your favorite geek news. If you have any interest in writing your own geek articles, I don't really care what you write about. Just, throw some content our way because I'd like to share you and share your passion for stuff. You can email us at duelingogres@gmail.com as well.
Just do it.
Just do it. And finally, be sure to leave a 5-star review on iTunes or find us on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or anywhere else you can find a podcast. So until next week, Ogres, keep your clubs blunt.
And your tusks sharp.
Good night. We have, which I already used incomparable for Steven.
Indomitable?
Indomitable.
Would you say you're dominable or indomitable?
Depends on the day.
Then we'll go with indomitable. Indomitable. If I can say it. Okay.
There's a lot of B's in it, it feels like.
There are. I'm still B word fat, Brandon. You're really pushing my ability.
What?
What? Nothing. I just giggled at the way he said sure.
Oh, okay. I thought you were laughing at a weird segue.
I mean, it was a weird segue.
In the Mace's Monsters and Magic series, Monsters, Maces, and Magic, right? Monsters, Maces, and Magic, or Mace's Monsters and Magic?
Monsters, Maces, and Magic.
Monsters, Maces, and Magic.
Good outtake.
Yep.